guys, this is Sugar Cyanide from House of Cyanide. I decided to do another video. This is a video response to Avalon Moon, Australian Witch, where she did a video that was kind of like a background video on who she is as a person versus just witchcraft videos. Now, there's going to be kind of a buzzing in the background. That's my air conditioner. So I'm going to try to talk loud enough and project so that you can hear me. One of my big pet peeves, especially with YouTube videos, is when people do not speak loud enough in their videos. And I'll have the volume cranked all the way on my computer and I still can't hear them. And I stop watching the video because it drives me nuts. So if I'm really loud, that's why. Better to be too loud than too quiet because you can always turn it down. So I wanted to give you guys some autobiographical information about myself. I was born July 5th in 1982, which makes me 30. Just outed myself and my age. I was born under a lunar eclipse. My mother distinctly tells me that I was a cesarean child, so I was cut from her. So like in the Shakespearean Macbeth story, you know, I was not born of a woman, I was cut from her. So, she distinctly tells me, because she was awake during the procedure, that she felt a cold breeze of all of the doctors and nurses running to the window to look at the lunar eclipse right as I was being born. So, this is a story that she's told me for quite some time. So, and there is a lunar eclipse that happened on July 5th, 1982. So, there is scientific fact that happened. So, I was born under a lunar eclipse. My family is a very, very traditional Christian family. I went to private schools all the way up to 12th grade, my senior year of high school. They were religious schools. And, let's see, I have to look at my notes, I'm sorry. My childhood was kind of sad. I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't really allowed to socialize. My mother was very, very afraid that something would happen to me if I were to leave the house. So all the way up into high school, I wasn't allowed to leave the house unless I was going to school. So what friends I did have, I didn't get to socialize with them very much because she was very, very controlling of my movements and the people that I associated with and all of that. So I became a huge book nerd. In order to escape the situation that I was living in, I really got into reading, which at first was very hard for me to read because I am dyslexic. And when I was a child, it was very difficult for me to read. I also had a speech impediment, and generally when you are teaching a child to read, you have them read out loud so that you know that they are reading. And I was very embarrassed and shy about my speech impediment, so while I could read, it was hard for me to pronounce the words. And so it looked like that I wasn't able to read, whereas it was that I really wasn't able to pronounce the words. I had a difficult time talking. And I think a lot of this also had to do with my lack of socialization as a child. Because of this, I have a hard time understanding people. Now, my opinion is because of this. It could be, you know, it could be a whole bunch of different things. I typically don't get along with groups of women, and I find women baffling. I just don't understand women, and I've learned now to stay away from them for the most part, because I simply don't understand them and they don't understand me, and it never ends well. So I didn't have a lot of friends as a child. I read a lot, and I definitely was not allowed near anything magic. I remember the first time I ever did a spell. I distinctly remember this. And looking back, I find it really, really interesting that I did this, because I wasn't allowed to watch Disney. I wasn't allowed to watch like The Last Unicorn or any horror movies, anything that had magic in it. I was not allowed to watch it. In fact, I remember my dad going on this huge tirade about Snow White and about how she dies and comes back, and that that was pagan brainwashing, and that they were trying to create an idol out of Snow White, and to make her like Jesus. And I was in a very, very strange household growing up as a child. So so I remember my first spell. I was in 4th grade. I'm thinking I was about 10 years old, maybe 9. And this girl that bullied me, she was a friend of mine at one point. She had just moved in as my next door neighbor. So her house was literally right next door to mine. And I was all excited that I had a girl close to my age moving in right next door to me, because then I could have a friend, because I wasn't really allowed to leave my house, and the next door neighbor's house was kind of close enough that I could, socialize. So we started out really, really good friends, and then I guess because I was such an awkward child, it ended up not being the case. And she ended up becoming a bully towards me. And I distinctly remember she spit in my face. I was so shocked. She had called me over and wanted, and then like hawked a loogie in my face, like out of nowhere. And I was flabbergasted. Like I was just minding my own business, playing in my backyard at this point, because we weren't friends, and I was trying to figure out, I don't even know why I went over there. I guess because I never would have expected, just to be attacked out of nowhere like that. And I was so upset that I remember casting a spell against her and her whole family. Like at that point I was done. I was pushed to the point that, there was no reasoning with me or anything. And Bast, my matron goddess, was with me at that time. Even though I was 10 years old, she was with me for as long as I can remember. For all I know, she was there the day I was born. And she guided my hand, and I picked berries off of some bushes and flowers, and I literally created a potion and a spell. And then I hexed them, and I put it in their yard, because they were my next door neighbors. And at that point, they finally left me alone. But not only did they leave me alone, their whole life fell apart. Apparently their father left their mother, and their house got foreclosed on, and they ended up having to move. And I ended up finding out later that they had all kinds of drug issues, and like their whole life just went down the drain after that. And now I don't know if this was the spell, that I did, or if this was just something that was going to happen, but that left a mark on me. And at this point in my head, I was still a Christian, because I was a 10-year-old kid. I was going to a Christian school. I had Christian parents. I didn't know anything about magic. In fact, my parents went out of their way to keep any kind of magic from me. So I don't even know where this concept of doing the spell came from. It just came natural to me. And like I said, Baz guided my hand, so it very well could have been Baz teaching me, and it very well could have been the spell, and it could have been because Baz was so upset that I was so abused that she, you know, created this domino effect off of this spell that a 10-year-old child did. I don't know. I thought about it for a long, long time. It's been 20 years. So that is when I distinctly remember my first ever pagan experience ever. And from then on, you know, I grew older, and I still had a very troubled childhood. I knew things I wasn't supposed to know. I had an easier time holding conversations with adults than children my own age, because children of my own age could not comprehend what I was saying. Like it just, you know, I don't know, I was more mature. And I remember I hated recess because that's when everybody would pick on me. So I remember purposely getting in trouble in school so that I would be punished during recess so that I wouldn't have to go to recess. And I remember being highly intelligent but also having a very hard time in school. And I know a lot of it was that I was very bored, and the social aspects of it really, really bothered me. And I couldn't really concentrate on the knowledge of learning because of the social aspects of the school and the political, you know, aspects of all of that. When I was in high school, I ended up having a huge falling out with my mother, who was abusive to me. She was physically and emotionally abusive to me, trying to control me again, and the more she tried to control me, the more I rebelled against it. And I moved out when I was 16 and moved in with my best friend in high school, which I did have a group of friends. By the time I came to high school, I had I finally started developing friends, and I had a really strong core group of friends. Which was like the first time in my life I finally had someone I could talk to, and, you know, that was supportive. And so I distinctly remember I had a huge fight with my mom, and she basically beat the crap out of me in front of my friends, and I moved out, and it was May 6th. And I ended up moving in with my best friend and her family, and finishing out my last year of high school while living with them. Now, I was going to a parochial Christian high school that, you know, was several $1,000s a year for tuition. So my school sponsored me. They let me continue going to school so that I wouldn't have to drop out or change schools. Because I was now living on my own and no longer on speaking terms with my parents. I ended up speaking to my parents for the first time in a year on the day of my graduation, which I did not want to go to my graduation, but my best friend's family was going and she was going, and so they basically made me go. In high school, the group of friends that I had gotten, we started looking into Wicca and witchcraft. It was 9th grade, my first year of high school. I was 13, 14 years old, and we had internet access at school. And at that time, the teachers didn't really know how to program the computers to filter what you could find on the internet. So, but they had a computer room monitor in the room to make sure that you weren't looking at like porn or anything like that. So I went on all of these witchcraft websites and studied as much as possible. And I remember distinctly when Baz introduced me introduced herself to me. Fast. In my head, I heard Google. Actually, it wasn't Google at that time. Alta Vista. It was Alta Vista. But it said, search cat and goddess. So I didn't know what her name was. I didn't, I just knew that she was, protective of me and was a cat. And so I searched cat and goddess, and the first thing that came up was Fast, and that's when I heard that's my name. And I was just like, ah! So, through high school, me and my girlfriends basically studied witchcraft. It was more my interest than anybody else. A couple of girls got into it with me, but we never did anything together. It was more like we would just pass books back and forth and have conversations. We were kind of like the girls in the craft, which the craft came out while I was in high school. We were those girls in the private school. But we never actually practiced anything that I'm aware of, that I remember. I did a lot of stuff at home. I did a lot of candle magic. My mom was always into candles. She still is. And she started giving me candles because I was a teenager. And so I started doing tons of candle magic. And my mom would be like, well, what are you doing? Why are you in here? What are you doing with all these candles? And I'm like, oh, I'm just burning them. Make their room smell pretty. Yeah. And she didn't know anything about candle magic, so she didn't understand what I was doing. And I didn't have pentacles or anything. I didn't own anything like that. I had to use what I had at home. I had to use what, I couldn't use any crystals because she knew about crystals. Because my aunt is a crystal witch. She's really, really into the new age and the crystals, and she knew all about crystals. Or not all about them, but my aunt was really into crystals and would give me crystals as presents, and then my mom would take them away. So I remember my aunt always giving me crystals all through childhood, and my mom would always take them away after my aunt left. So I couldn't use any crystals, but I used, household items that I had in my house, and I practiced that way, and they had no idea what I was doing, and no one really knew that I was doing this. Well, graduated high school, was living with my best friend's family, and I decided I couldn't live with them anymore. They were only okay with me staying there while I was in high school, and they were going to be going out of town for several weeks. They didn't want to take me with them because they'd have to pay my way, and they didn't want me in their house alone, so I couldn't stay there. And it wasn't really my home. So I moved in with my older brother, which lasted less than 90 days because he and his girlfriend at the time and I did not get along at all. And to him, I was always his kid sister, and he didn't see everything that I went through, which is really interesting because he's not speaking to my parents now, and he's now seeing what I went through as a kid. He's now seeing that side of my parents, which he never saw that side of them. So, I was homeless yet again, and I got married. Because I was a good little Christian girl and couldn't live with my boyfriend because I basically had already disowned my parents, and his parents said that they would disown him if we lived together. So we got married. So I'm 18 years old, fresh out of high school. I've only been 18 for, 3 months. My birthday's in July, and we got married in October. So I've only been 18 for 3 months, and we get married. And we have our own little apartment. And I was working at Macy's at the time, and trying to go to college. And my high school boyfriend was the guy that I married, and at that time he was my knight in shining armor. Like, he was the one that witnessed everything that I went through. He was the one that kind of helped me escape that whole situation. And we started to build a life together. We bought a house. I signed a contract on the house when I was 18. I hadn't even turned 19 yet. So we bought the house in June of the next year. And I went full-time at Macy's and bought a car. So by the time I was 19 years old, I owned my own car, I owned a house, I had a full-time job, and I was going to college. I had set aside my practice of Wicca. It made my husband at the time very uncomfortable. He was still very, very Christian. And I was focusing on the mundane, just trying to survive, just trying to keep a roof over my head and food in my stomach, and trying to go to college because I was raised, you have to go to college, you have to go to college, you can't not go to college. So here I was trying to keep a roof over my head and food in my stomach and trying to go to college. So, okay, that gets me up to high school. So I ended up working full-time at Macy's, and I got into the cosmetics department. I was a makeup artist for Macy's for 6 years. I worked for Clinique and Origins, Lancome, Estee Lauder, and then I was a manager for Elizabeth Arden. My marriage lasted 6 years. After 6 years, I decided that I realized, because I had gotten older, I wasn't in love with him. He saved me, and I loved him, but I wasn't in love with him. And we had started to grow apart, because we were no longer teenagers anymore. We were becoming adults. We started growing in different directions. And I was pretty horrible to him. I treated him really badly, and I knew that I was making him miserable. So I asked for a divorce. And I asked for a divorce the same year that I decided to open my own business. And I had a store in the Delmar Loop. Now, for those of you not from St. Louis, the Delmar Loop is a very urban, chic, really cool area. It's kind of where all the hip happening stuff is going on, or at least it was then. It still is, but not as much as it was. It's South Grand is kind of taking over what Delmar used to be. South Grand is another area in St. Louis. So think of the Delmar Loop, I guess, kind of like the French Market in New Orleans, only it's one stretch. South Grand's kind of the same way. It's kind of where all the cool little indie shops are, and there's some concert venues and all that kind of stuff. So, I had a store in the Delmar Loop, and at this time I went through great, huge upheaval. I left my husband, I left Macy's, I started my own business, and I had two gentlemen in my life who were not gentlemen. They were both users and abusers. In that same year, one of them embezzled all the money out of my company, and I lost everything. I lost the house that my husband and I bought. I was homeless yet again, and the other one was physically, emotionally, and verbally abusive. And I basically tried killing myself several times that year. And actually, it was my ex-husband that saved my life, because despite the fact that despite the fact that I wasn't in love with him, we were still really close, and the divorce was really amicable. We still talk today, and there's no bad feelings. But he saved my life, because he called me right after I had taken a bunch of pills and said, "Something's wrong, don't do this." He had no idea what was going on. And that call saved my life, because I would have died. And that wasn't the first time that I had tried that. I had tried that several times when I was in high school, and several times when I was a young child, when I was a kid. because of the situation that I was living in when I was a child. So after all of that insanity, I ended up getting my life back together. I ended up getting a really good job as an administrative assistant, and rebuilt my life, rebuilt everything, and ended up meeting the man of my dreams, Rocky. We've been ecstatically happy. One of the very first times that I met Rocky, we went to go see A Clockwork Orange as a play, because a friend of ours is a stage manager, and we went as a big group of people, and Rocky and I ended up sitting next to together, and that's when we bonded. And after the play was over, we ended up going to Route 13, which is a bar, and at Route 13 they had the Albuquerque Review, which was the first burlesque review in the Midwest since the 70s. And these girls started out from scratch, not really, you know, looking at the old history books and the old videos and teaching themselves. And I saw their show. I saw Greta Garner do Rob Zombie's Pussy Liquor and fell in love. And I looked right at Rocky and said, I want to do that. And he goes, you should. And that's when I said, that's not only when I fell in love with burlesque, but that's when I fell in love with Rocky. Was the fact that this man would be encouraging me to do something like that. So I ended up taking lessons for 2 years from Lola Vanella, who is an internationally known burlesque performer from St. Louis, still in St. Louis. And she taught me everything that I know, and then I went on to teaching myself, having my own students, having my own troupe, performing several times a week, leaving my job as an administrative assistant and performing full-time to pay my bills. And this last year I've really been going through a lot of changes. I ended up letting the troupe go. I stopped teaching. I've stopped performing. And I've really been focusing on my spirituality. Now, part of what's happened is I've had a lot of health stuff go on. I am a diabetic. I've been a diabetic since I was 18. But in a lot of ways I've neglected my diabetes because I was in denial about it. But it wasn't just being in denial about it. The medicine that I have to take for my diabetes makes me very sick. And it's really hard for me to take a medicine that makes me feel worse, that's supposedly better for me, than not taking it and feeling better. So it's taken me a really long time to take care of my diabetes because the cure felt worse than the problem. Now granted, I was doing internal damage to my kidneys and my liver and my heart and all kinds of stuff because I wasn't taking care of my diabetes. But part of the problem, like I said, was the medicine made me feel so sick, and I didn't feel sick when I wasn't on the medicine. I felt fine, despite some mood swings from the sugars going up and down and what have you. But the medicine actually makes me feel more sick than anything. So, and I tried herbal remedies, I tried all of that, and it's not working for me. So I am back on the medicine. It's taking me since May. This is now going into August. So it's taking me 3 months for my body to adjust to the medicine, and I still have days where I feel absolutely terrible because of the medicine. Let's see. I guess that's pretty much everything with my mundane life. I do have the video Witchy Resume that talks about my spiritual path. As I said, I am a dedicant to Bast. I do work with Bast. And I'll probably do much more videos on witchcraft and all of those things, you know, in the future. Right now I'm just kind of getting back into making videos on a regular basis. So I hope you enjoyed this. I know this was really long. It was like my whole life story. But I just wanted to give you a little bit about myself. You know, so I am a burlesque performer. I also do spin fire. I started working with fire a year ago. So I just started learning poi and breathing and eating fire. And so I've only done a little bit of performing with fire because I want to master it before I take it on stage. I've really just been focused elsewhere. But I do some performing with fire. I also do performance with these 10-foot long gymnastic ribbons. That's kind of like a belly dance inspired routine with these ribbons. I say inspired because I have taken belly dance lessons, but and I can do some belly dance, but I am nowhere as good as these people that perform professionally belly dance. I'm not at that level whatsoever, and even though I am a known performer, I do not feel it gives those women credit if I were to do a belly dance routine, because I haven't put in the time, effort, and energy that they have to learn belly dance, and I would just be faking it. And they don't deserve me to fake it. I think that's insulting to their craft. So I wouldn't want them to do that to my craft. So I guess that's it. If y'all have any questions, let me know. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, in the Midwest. There's a lot of really wonderful things about it, and there's a lot of horrible things about it. We're still in a drought, so if you are in a place that has rain, send us your rain. We haven't had rain since June. We need it really badly. Alrighty, thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.